1, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Christina. And now I'd like to call to order the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Administration and Projects Committee meeting to order. And Christina, will you please start the roll? Call the roll. Thank you.
Chair Arnott.
Yeah, here.
Vice Chair Nowak.
Here.
Member Butt.
Here.
Member Geringer. You're here. I can't hear you though.
Oh, I said here.
Okay. And Member Thorpe. And he's absent. Okay, we have enough members for a quorum.
Great, thank you. And the next item on our agenda is public comment. This is for comment on anything that's not on our agenda. And if you'd like to speak on anything that's relevant to our agency, under our control, and it's not on today's agenda, please raise your hand in the participant area, your virtual hand, or physically raise your hand and we will call on you. And first, Christina, are there any written comments from public?
No, I have not received any written comments.
Okay, and I do not see anybody raising their hand. So we will close the public hearing and under public comments. And the next item is our consent calendar. And the consent calendar are items that we can act on in one vote. However, if there's anybody in the public who would wish to remove an item for comment, we can do so. Is there anybody who has provided any written comments on this, Christina?
No, I've received no written comments.
Okay, and if there's anybody watching today on Zoom who would like to, please use your virtual raise hand or physically raise your hand and we will call on you. And I do not see any. So we will close the public hearing of the consent calendar. And is there anybody on the committee who would like to remove an item for discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Nowak, seconded by Geringer. Any further comments? Seeing none, Christina, will you please call the roll?
Okay. Vice Chair Nowak.
Yes.
Member Butt.
Yes.
Member Geringer. And
Yes.
Member Thorpe. Okay, the motion passes.
I'll vote yes too. I didn't get
I was about to say, I don't know if you got Newell.
Oh, I'm sorry. You must not have heard me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're all waking up this morning. All right, this will take us to that item passes unanimously with those present. Next item is item number 4, our regular agenda items. Item number 4A, and a legislative update. And Lindsay, you are up and welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Chair and Commissioners. And it seems like we haven't missed a beat since December. January is here again, and there's a lot happening at both the federal level and the state level. So for this particular item, I'm going to ask our advocates, Madeline Pike with Ty Ginsburg and Associates and Mark Watts, to give an update on what's happening in their respective houses. And then the next item will move on to looking towards the future for our federal platforms for 2022. But perhaps we can start with the federal side of the house this morning. So Madeline, would you like to give an update?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, and thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for having me today. As Lindsay said, it's turning into a busy month, but this week we actually had quite a major snowstorm in DC for DC standards, and that impacted the Senate work that was supposed to be scheduled. All of the votes were canceled this week in the Senate. So one thing that I think is kind of at the top of everyone's mind right now is the status of the Build Back Better Act, the major spending bill that we keep talking about. There was supposed to be some sort of action on it this week, but like I said, because of the snowstorm, that was delayed. It seems like there's still some pretty big disagreements between Majority Leader Schumer and Senator Manchin. So we're closely following that. I think it's still a ways away, but we'll definitely be keeping our eye on that because that's really the big buzz in Washington right now. I have heard that they're thinking of taking up the Voting Rights Act bill before that, but it's still a little bit unclear. So we'll be keeping you in the know as we move forward. Another thing that I just want to note is in the past couple of weeks, there have been several announcements of retirements in the House, especially on the Democratic side. There have been 25 retirements so far, 4 of them being from California, actually. And so I think that this just sort of indicates the future of the majority in the House and what this means for working with the Senate and House and administration in general. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is just funding the government. So the continuing resolution, which is the funding legislation that we have right now, that expires on February 18th. And Congress is still looking at putting together an omnibus, which is a compilation of appropriations bills. So it's would include the transportation bill, an energy and water bill, all of these things kind of tied together. And so we're looking at that as well and following the appropriations process because there are a couple things that CCTA has submitted as earmarks towards that. So we'll definitely keep you in the loop on that. And I think that's all for this part of the presentation that I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, Madeline. Thank you. Any questions? Madeline, how about an easy one? Are they actually back physically?
I mean, it's kind of crazy because some were able to come back, but for instance, Senator Tim Kaine, who lives in Richmond, Virginia, who used to be my senator, actually got stuck on I-95, which is the major highway that goes up and down the East Coast. They shut it, and this is just, I wish this happened before we passed an infrastructure bill because it was actually shut down for 24 hours. So there were people in their cars with kids, dogs, sitting on the road overnight and in the 20-degree weather. And so it was really horrible. And so he wasn't able to come back in time for votes.
Well, but otherwise, officially, they've all been requested to be back and not continue. Okay, that's great.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Madeline, thank you so much. All the best to you. Is the weather a little better there now, or?
We're supposed to have another snowstorm tonight. DC never gets snow, so.
Yeah, right.
Fun.
Climate change. Welcome. Okay, back to you, Lindsay. Are we going to go to Mark?
gonna hand it straight over to Mark.
Okay, welcome, Mark. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and thank you, Chair and committee members. Pleasure to be here today. I don't have a very long presentation, but I've got some interesting news to relate. First of all, the legislature did return on January 3rd and immediately went through the reconvening process. What's notable about this particular month of January as the first month of the second year is all two-year bills that had been retained in the first house have to complete their first house committees and be voted out of the first house. Otherwise, they're dead for the rest of the session. So the rest of this month is going to focus on the movement of legislation that was introduced last year, while we're also going to see the beginning of introduction of new legislation for the rest of this session. And finally, I just touch on the fact that the budget is expected to be introduced by the governor on January 10th, next Monday. The Constitution requires him to do it by then. There have been a lot of rumors that they may do it a bit early, but it appears now by all accounts that it's actually going to happen on Monday the 10th. The carryover issues that affect transportation and CCTA opportunities are the fact that at the end of the last year session, the legislature and the governor were unable to get to closure on his request for $4.2 billion in Prop 1A bonds for high-speed rail, coupled with almost $3.5 billion worth of general fund for major transit investments around the state. So that was carried over. It was expected that when the January 10th comes around, that the governor's objective to get back into the game on the high-speed rail was to call for an early action on the conjoined funding package. But by all accounts, in touching base with governor's office folks and touching base with budget folks, it doesn't appear that that will happen. There's no need to speculate whether it's going to happen or not. We'll know by January 10th. So I'll be keeping Lindsay apprised of any opportunities that may arise if there is a request for early action on that portion of the budget. In anticipation that the governor would continue to press for the joint action, high-speed rail plus general fund for transit, most transportation planning organizations around the state have either issued their own letters in support or joined other more regional letters like the MTC letter that was approved a couple weeks back. In most cases, folks are looking at the budget and looking at the reported $34 billion revenue surplus coming up and are modifying the request on the general fund side from 3.5 billion up to as much as 10 billion in some of the regions of the state. I know that that's been met with kind of a perplexed attitude by the governor's office, because as they look at the $30+ billion surplus, 40+% is going to go to Prop 98, and there may well be a GAN limit, state appropriation limit problem, which would require some funding to be returned to taxpayers in the state of California. So the 30+ billion is going to be probably closer to 12 that's available for new programs or one-time investments. So this will be an interesting presentation on January 10th, and I'll be sure to get the information out early to staff. The other thing I want to report on is the Transportation Commission. Typically, every February, there are one or two positions that become vacant. And then there's a flurry of activity trying to reappoint. In this case, Commissioner Alvarado, whose term expires February 2nd, he's already indicated he is no longer going to participate. So he's not seeking reappointment. The other vacancy that would come due would be the one that's been held for a very long time by Fran Inman, who's a very, very expert commissioner on freight and freight movement in the state. And a lot of folks are lining up trying to assist her in getting reappointed. So that'll be something we'll find out sometime in the month of February. In addition, the other thing that's been notable and it's kind of a high degree of interest in the Capitol here is the potential turnover. I just finished putting together a list of turnovers that we have in the Assembly, and I haven't finished the one for the Senate, but in the Assembly, counting folks that had been appointed to other positions in the fall and looking ahead at announcements or looking ahead at the effect that certain announcements have been made by members. Well, there's 15 members that will no longer be here at the end of this session. 4 of those are the ones I mentioned that have been appointed to other offices. Like Mr. Bonta is appointed to the Attorney General, and there's a couple of others. 5 members are looking for higher offices and moving on to other challenges. And then outright retirements, number 4 in the Assembly. And that's just by the first week in January of the second year of the session. So it could get livelier, and particularly as the reality of the congressional changes and the districts flow through the Assembly, we may see others taking on other positions or challenging for other positions in the coming weeks. So it's a notable activity. Everybody's comparing notes, watching the Instagram to make sure everybody's on top of who's leaving and who's staying. So that's my report for today, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. And of course, I'll be available as well for any questions that may arise for the legislative advocacy platform discussion. So thank you. If there's any questions, I'll be available.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much. Any questions of Mark? Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item at all in writing, Christina?
No, we've received no public comment.
Was there anybody who is attending today who would like to make any public comment? Please raise your hand, virtual or physical, and we'll call on you.
Chair, may I add one
Yes.
other notable resignation to the record? Secretary David Kim has also
yeah.
announced that he is resigning to spend more time with his family in Virginia. So Undersecretary Alyssa Kanobe is currently acting until that position is filled.
Very good. Great. Teresa.
So actually on that, and Mark, when is the, what's the timeline for those types of appointments? Is it just as the governor, what's the process for filling a Secretary of Transportation or other governor appointments?
It's a bifold process. First, the governor gets to select whomever he wishes. And that vetting process and review process is underway now. And then once he makes the appointment, the secretary level, cabinet level is subject to review by the Senate and approval. So they can go fast. I've seen them, particularly if Secretary Kim had given them an early notice privately before it went public, they could have been looking for folks. Rumors right now are a couple of people are already surfacing. One would be the Caltrans director, Tokes Omishakin. But there will be others coming to the forefront. The other, I'll mention, Assembly Member Frazier, who's retired effective January 1st, had been looking at trying to obtain a position as the freight czar for the Secretary's office. And now I'm hearing he's throwing his hat in the ring to be considered for the secretary position. So you heard it here first.
Great, thank you, Mark. Thanks, Teresa. Any other questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, this is just an information item only. And Madeline and Mark, thank you. And this will take us to item number 4B. And this is approval of the proposed 2022 state and federal legislative advocacy programs. And Lindsay, we'll take it back to you to kick it off.
Excuse me. Yes, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Each year, the authority adopts both a state and federal advocacy platform. And as you'll note in your packets, these documents are actually fairly light. They're no more than, double-sided on each side of the page. And it's really intended to be a framework for our state and federal advocates to use as a guide when they're looking at policy and legislation, to help them kind of ferret out what might be relevant to us, what the authorities' priorities are for this year. And I think for both the state and federal levels, you'll see a few common themes among both of the platforms. Obviously one of our themes that has carried through for many years is maximizing funding opportunities. This is really important not only on the federal side with the amount of dollars that we know are coming down the pipeline from the Infrastructure Act, but also as we get, closer to the end of our measure, there are less dollars for CCTA to use as match funds for grants and other opportunities. So we're going to have to start to get very creative about how we try to fund some of these future efforts. You'll also notice technology is a common theme amongst both platforms, kind of trying to advance that policy and legislation related to connected and automated vehicles so that we can kind of move beyond just individual one-off pilots and start to get into actual implementation, which we've heard is of interest to our constituents, being able to actually provide some of these services to fill first and last mile gaps, not on a single year or couple year basis as a pilot program. There are a lot of initiatives that the CCTA team is working on this year, and you'll note that there are elements of both frameworks that support that. For example, the Accessible Strategic Transportation Plan implementation is going to take up a lot of staff and commissioner time this year as we work towards making that a better service offering for our constituents. And so you'll notice those themes of kind of mobility for all and support for transit and paratransit funding, and trying to find some new sources of money or new partnerships that could help fund some of those efforts. We're also really focused on electrification. We know there's going to be dollars coming down the pipeline for that. And CCTA in Contra Costa was one of the first counties to actually have an electric vehicle blueprint. We adopted it in 2019, for those of you who were here and remember that. So we actually have a map of every place we would need to put electric vehicles in the county to kind of support a build out of that infrastructure. We think that positions us really well, and will hopefully continue to kind of support a shift towards cleaner fuels and clean transit, and also workforce development. That kind of goes hand in hand with some of these new technologies. As part of the California Energy Commission grant we got, we are working with organizations in Richmond and Pittsburgh to help train folks on how to install and repair electric vehicle charging stations. And that's something we're looking to do more of in the future, to kind of tie some of these new technologies to workforce development programs. We're also working on a connected signal system, which is related to technology, but that kind of connected signal system also really serves the backbone for some of the Vision Zero efforts that we're looking to implement as it relates to kind of on-street traffic. Some of the newer traffic controllers and technology that's out there can help us be more proactive about safety and start to identify hotspots and near misses so that we can address those, before something terrible happens. And so with that, I do want to remind you that this is intended to just be a guide for our federal advocates. Anytime we take a position on a bill or an actual policy, that will come back to APC as an action item for you to vote on. So this doesn't blanketly bind you to anything. It's more to give some guidance to those who work with us, and also to you as you're out in the community, to kind of have a sense of what we're working on and what we might be looking for as opportunities are presented to all of you as well. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and Madeline and Mark are here as well if something in particular catches your eye and you want to know more about it.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. And just obviously our policies have guided us well, along with our legislative advocates that we've had both in Washington and the state. And you're right, we're always looking for what's the next bill. But I do think, just a personal comment, and I know Tim has talked about this as our executive director, that as our agency has a event horizon in 2034, that we do have opportunities with funding to look at ways to set aside, under rules that the board would have to create, funds that are there specifically to act as matching funds. It's sad, given our agency, that we've committed so much of our funds ahead of time, but I do think the board has the authority and the right, and not jeopardizing programs as we see our revenues have been increasing, and as the tax act for return to source sales taxes coming back to our county has really helped our agency a lot. And I think that's why our projections are going to look much more robust, as well as all of our cities are. Call it the Amazon bill that has made a big difference, that fortunately came in time, just about the time the pandemic hit. So with that, any questions of Lindsay or our advocates on our policies at this point from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Christina, did we receive any public comment on this item?
Oh, we've received no public comment.
Okay, and is there anybody here today who would like to comment on this item? Please raise your virtual hand or your physical hand and we'll call on you. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And this is an action item. Is there a motion for this?
I move approval of the adoption of the proposed 2022 state and federal advocacy program to the for the authority.
Great, thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Geringer, seconded by Nowak. Any further discussion or comments?
No, I just want to say it's really nice, well done, very concise and very well laid out. Just want to make that comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. All right, Christina, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Arnrich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nowak,
Yes.
Member Butt,
Yes.
Member Geringer,
Yes.
Member Thorpe. The motion passes with members present.
Great, thank you. And Lindsay, and again, Madeline and Mark, thank you both. And we look forward to an exciting year. I think we're in a great strategic position with your advocacy. And I think our leadership team is poised to do well this year. So thank you. Okay, this takes us to our next item on the agenda. It's number 4C. And this is approval of second amendment to the employment agreement with Timothy Hale, Executive Director. And this recommendation is the chair seeks authority board approval of the second amendment to the authority's employment agreement with Timothy Hale, Executive Director, which will adjust the compensation to $303,372 per year, effective December 27, 2021. The term of the amendment will remain through December 27, 2023. And Terry Ann will carry this item. Terry Ann? There you go.
Sorry. Hello, this is Terry. Good morning, ABC committee. Sorry, just one moment. I'm having a computer issue here. Okay, so the authority board, the chair seeks approval of the second amendment to the authority's employment agreement with Timothy Hale, Executive Director, which will adjust his compensation to $303,372 per year, effective December 27th, 2021. The term of the amendment will remain through December 27th, 2023. We held closed sessions with both the APC and the board in December, and it was determined that a 6% increase would be awarded to Tim. So this is just memorializing that recommendation in the closed session.
Great. Thank you, Terry Ann. Are there any comments from board members on this?
No, I'm ready to make a motion after you go
Let's,
through
do
your
public hearing.
process.
Okay. And Teresa, just thank you. As you know, I couldn't make our December meeting. Thank you for holding up the closed session. You did a wonderful job. Christina, did you have any written comments on this item?
Not receive any written comments.
Okay. Is there anybody here? We'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody here in the public who wishes to make any comments? If so, please raise your virtual hand in the or your physical hand and we'll call on you. I do not see any, so we'll close the public hearing and Teresa will take it back to you for a motion.
Thank you. I am happy to move that we approve the second amendment to the employment agreement for Timothy Hale as the executive director of CCTA.
I'll second it, but
Great. It's been moved by Geringer and seconded by Butt. Any further comments or discussion from the committee? Seeing none, then we will go for call the roll. Christina?
Yes, Chair Arnold,
Yes.
Vice Chair Noack,
Yes,
Member Butt,
yes,
Member Geringer,
Yes,
Member Thorpe. And the motion passes with members present.
Great, thank you. And just a compliment to you, Tim, for an outstanding year as our executive director, as we are charted to continue to do great things and even better under your leadership. So thank you very much. Okay, this will take us to item number 5, correspondence and communication. I don't think we have anything today. Christina, did you have any?
No, I do not.
Okay, and item number 6, commissioner and staff comments. Chair comments, I have none at this time. Any from committee members? Seeing none. 6C, any executive staff comments? Tim, anything on your side?
No executive comments this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Is there any other business? Seeing none, Happy New Year to all. And for many of you, we'll see you, or committee members, we'll see you tonight.
Yep.
On the
See you
mayor's
tonight.
conference. Otherwise, we are adjourned. It's 9:03. So Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you.
thank you.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.